Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Poultry Podcast Show. I'm Karen Grogan, today's host. And with me, I have a very esteemed colleague of ours, Dr. Bruce Stewart-Brown. Bruce works for Purdue Farms here in the United States, where he holds the title of Senior Vice President of Technical Services and Innovation. Bruce has been with Purdue since 1998 in a role for technical support, so supporting nutritionists, veterinarians, all of their professionals that they have within their operation. And then he is also responsible for technical innovation. Purdue Farms it has completely eliminated the use of antibiotics, so we'll probably touch on that subject. And they've also are really making strides in terms of broiler welfare. So we'll probably chat about that today. Bruce, welcome to the Poultry Podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here.
Excellent. What I usually like to start with is because we do have people that are just entering their careers in the poultry industry or even students. How did you get to be senior vice president at Purdue Farms?
Yeah, so I started. I'd go back to vet school. I did a project as a sophomore in vet school with some turkeys, with turkey physiology experiment through the summer, and got talking with different folks in the vet school about the opportunities in poultry and poultry veterinary medicine. And that seemed like the epitome of food animal to me. I knew I wanted to be a food animal. I was raised in a rural part of Illinois. My dad was a vet. It was a mixed practice, lots of pigs, lots of cattle. Knew I wanted to do food animal if I could figure that out. I just didn't know which food animal. Got a BS in animal science, so I was kind of interested in the animal science piece as well as the veterinary medicine piece. And poultry kind of gave you a whole bunch of numbers. That was cool. You could study, health beyond disease, beyond clinical disease. That seemed really important, and I thought poultry had a really strong future in the food animal area. I was lucky enough then to get a few experiences as a senior. I did my senior rotations in poultry projects or in poultry areas. I went to NC State and did their senior rotation. I went to University of Pennsylvania and did a little stint in the diagnostic lab. Got out of vet school, and I was determined to get a job in poultry if I could right out of vet school. I told many people I'm not sure I would have ever hired a person like me. It's such a big step to kind of go into poultry, but I say I found somebody desperate enough, and I was lucky to start working in Salisbury Laboratories in Charles City, Iowa. I went to Iowa State. This was right in Iowa. So started with biologics, pharmaceutics, technical service job, did that for 12 years, traveled around the world, worked with a lot of companies. And one of them was Purdue. I had spent some time with Purdue on some projects, and a clinical veterinary job opened up on the Eastern Shore. I was lucky enough to get that and start as a field veterinarian. And then I did the health services piece of the Eastern Shore, as well as the director position, and then food safety and quality. Wanted to try to move to a more holistic view of food safety and quality and start to address some things on the live side. And so I went over to food safety and quality, and I was VP of food safety and quality for 10 years or so. And then live operations was an opportunity that I had responsibility for food safety and quality and live operations. And that is trying to take all these ideas about healthy chickens, make better chicken, and kind of put them all together. And then in the last few years, we've had technical services become a thing again. So it's veterinarians and nutritionists in the labs. And then working on innovation, which is the component of if you're going to have something to talk about in 5 years as it relates to the chickens we raise and the products we make, what will we talk about? And so I've always done a little bit of that. You mentioned the No Antibiotics Ever project, the Animal Care project. All those are long-term things that we started working on years ago and kind of evolved them into things. And there's more things like that. So that's a really long story to the.
No, that's a good story. It's cold in Charles City, Iowa.
It is.
I hear other people who went through Salisbury Labs. That was their one thing. It's
Yep.
in terms of how many locations are you over at Purdue Farms?
All the chicken, the technical service group is responsible for the chickens and turkey veterinary nutrition work throughout the company. So let's say 13 million chickens a week and about that same number of turkeys a year. I do a little bit of work in pork and beef for some of the companies that Purdue has, Nyman Ranch, Coleman Natural Foods. Not anything in particular, and some of those pieces are kind of moved, like controlled atmosphere stunning pieces or meat quality discussions or antibiotic use discussions that kind of branch over the whole company. We get involved in that as well.
I think our listeners might be interested to know that in your time at Purdue, you've also done some TV appearances and some commercials, right?
I did. There were several commercials. I don't even know how long ago this was, probably 10 years ago or something, where we were using different people throughout the company. And actually, they were kind of modeled after the Sam Adams commercials. If you remember those beer commercials with people in that run the machinery and all that, speaking for the products. We did a little bit of that. And yeah, so, and the other thing is I look a little bit like Jim Purdue. And he makes fun of that quite a bit, but I know we did a couple commercials where Jim was in them and then he wasn't in them, and then they asked consumers, was Jim in these commercials? And basically they said all the commercials Jim's in there, whether he was or he wasn't.
Right. Well, I think that is you have definitely sort of pushed open doors for veterinarians within production, you and others, in terms of moving into more production roles, not just necessarily in a veterinary health role. What advice would you give to people that are looking at jobs that are more production or management based?
Well, I think I feel strong about this. I think I've done more, or I had more ability to make a contribution to health in general through the live operations components than I ever, I did with managing vaccination programs. Managing vaccination programs or feed formulation kind of ideas around health certainly are valuable, but most everybody knows most of the things that go on are often triggered by a management practice of some sort. And if you can influence, and actually I believe so strongly about this, if you are working on No Antibiotics Ever or different things, it will take you to animal care and animal management kind of things so quickly. I mean, if you really want to be successful in overall health and care, you have to be able to get involved in management styles and management practices, and either have a really good relationship with live operations such that you can influence the progression or get involved in it directly. There are so many good jobs in production for veterinarians other than the typical health field veterinarian kind of piece. And I hope veterinarians, or those with other interests, allow themselves to kind of explore that.
Excellent advice. I think you should, encourage. I think veterinarians, we're not unique in this, but we are trained to be problem solvers, and I think that can carry over. And exactly like you're saying, as you try to tackle one piece, they quickly carry over into so many other parts. So you mentioned Purdue's no antibiotics ever, and this is a long-standing initiative. As I think the rest of the industry has pretty much fully followed suit. Um, what do you see as the next steps for our U.S. industry? I know that welfare standards are definitely have been in place for a long time, and Purdue Farms is sort of a leader in that. What do you see are the next things we'll be talking about in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, well, if I can start, I'd like to describe the progression a little bit. We actually named the project for moving to reducing and eliminating antibiotics in 2002. So that was 20 years ago that we actually made it a thing, right? So we said we believe that consumers are concerned about this, and it's really not, by the way, it wasn't as much a public health like antibiotic resistance piece that consumers were worried about. They were feeding back to us that they were concerned that we were raising animals in such a way that we needed to use antibiotics as much as we were. So it quickly became, although we put the project around how do we stop using antibiotics so much. And by the way, our program is really not no antibiotics ever. It's treatment only. And so we raise animals. We start them without antibiotics. We are not intending to use any, but if flocks get sick, we treat them. They just don't go into the label, no antibiotics ever. So we have a number of treated flocks every year, which, by the way, is considerably, it's less than 1%, generally runs about in the 0.5% range. And there's ups and downs in that, as you might expect, given on a particular year or situation. So anyhow, so no antibiotics ever started in 2002. And it became clear like 2008 and 2010 that, wait a second, for us to really kind of be successful here, we're going to have to evolve the way we raise chickens. And so then it became like, so what are we saying there? What do you want to do as it relates to our management approach in order for us to be successful on no antibiotics ever? What do we got to do to the feed? What do we got to do to the approach to sanitation in general, and the breeders and the hatcheries and all the things that people talk about today and have learned? But the part that's really important is you can't raise chickens the same way. You're going to have to decide and figure out what the new method of your approach to animal care is. And that became then another formal program around animal care. And it's really the kind of even sits higher than no antibiotics ever. It's a byproduct. No antibiotics ever becomes a byproduct of this bigger program around how you care for chickens. So it has evolved us as a company quite a bit, the piece in animal care. And I think it will continue to. In the biggest part of the next several years, and this is a really important thing for veterinarians and other folks to consider, is yes, of course, health's important, livability is important, feed conversion is important, but do you care at all about animals, putting the animal in a position to express normal or natural behaviors? That's the question. And that's a big question for the industry, because I would say the industry is generally weak in this subject of creating an environment for chickens to be chickens, and how much you have to evolve the management style if you decide you're going to embrace that part of raising animals. And that'll be a good conversation for everybody in the next several years. Do you care about it? And if you care about, what are you going to do about it?
In terms of innovative animal care standards that you have within Purdue, Um, what are some of your what are the innovations that you think make the largest impact?
Well, controlled atmosphere stunning is a very, in my mind, after seeing controlled atmosphere stunning, I went around the world to like this was about 5 years ago. We took a group around and asked the people that are producing controlled atmosphere stunning systems where's your best system in the world? We'll go see it. And they all said, go here, go. This is our cutting edge place, and it might have been well, they were almost all in Europe. So we went from one place to the other and visited the best systems they have. And after you look at them, you go, wait a second, I think this is a better way compared to electrical stun. Electrical stun gold standard is instantaneous. That part is really good, but the unloading piece is not even a question. It's the biggest part that we as an industry have to take a look at and do something perhaps different in. And that controlled atmosphere stunning allows you to relook at how you unload chickens from the live haul module to the plant piece. So control atmosphere stunning, I'm a believer. It's just expensive, and it's something to work through. We've said as a company we're going to be 100% control atmosphere stunned. We just have to figure out how we'll migrate that through that over the years.
And do you have a year timeline for that?
Yeah, we didn't say a time, and thankfully we haven't, because COVID and some of the other kind of manufacturing problems have made liars out of a lot of people as it relates to a lot of things. And so anyhow, we have a plan to put a second system in starting here this summer, and we'll just keep going. Our turkeys are all controlled atmosphere stuns. The pigs are all atmosphere stun, controlled atmosphere stun. So we're working through chickens. That's a big deal. I think density is a real important subject. I'm not sure we as an industry have density right, especially if you incorporate the thought of looking at natural behaviors and encouraging natural behaviors. So I think density has to be looked at almost every year, because I think the bird changes so much from one year to the next. And although you're using the same genetic package, of course, it's not the same. So looking at density is like a career-long, a lifelong kind of challenge for the poultry industry, and should be. Enrichments, I believe in enrichments, honestly, things in the chicken house to allow a chicken to climb or hide or perch or rest above the ground. Enrichments, I've seen enough of them. One of the big things for us is when we bought Coleman a number of years ago, although I would have made fun, honestly, about some of the things associated with organic. Once we really got to see it in person, you end up going, some of these things, we need to do this for all the chickens. This is such a kind of obviously a step forward in management style. And in this case, although enrichments are not necessarily part of the organic standard, they were in all the organic houses. So enrichments is a really interesting area. And honestly, I think there's real opportunities there. But one of the things about enrichments, I don't really talk so much about the animal certification pieces, as much as I believe that a company should get interested in where they want to take animal care, if it's within the certification standard, or if it's because they've learned this is a better thing for chickens. And some of those, honestly, for us, have come from farmers going, look, if you want to take animal care to another level in the company, why don't you look at this? Why don't you look at these things? And so, getting feedback from farmers is a really big part of our program, and important for us as we kind of move through this in the next several years.
I think that that really speaks to how our industry can move forward is a two-way communication and taking feedback from the people who are actually caring for the birds every day. Um, a lot of people think that it's you know they're just told what to do. So I think that that's a great piece that they're the ones that see the bird care every day, and they're the ones carrying out the programs that we develop. So that's wonderful to hear that that's where you get the feedback from.
Actually, I would say our program involves input from 4 different areas. One is science, for sure. There's a lot of science on welfare, and some of it translates and some of it doesn't. So there's the kind of academia piece. The second part is the farmer. Get the farmer to give you some feedback and some ideas. A third part is the consumer. Honestly, you can say you're going to go off to the side and decide how to raise chickens, but if the consumer finds it, at least after you explain it to them and they still don't get it, I'm not sure you got to figure that out, because they're the ones eating chicken, right? So you got to kind of somehow incorporate the consumer into your thoughts about animal care. And then I believe it's important to ask advocates, animal rights, animal welfare advocates, those that believe in eating meat and chicken, but are concerned for the care of animals. We've decided we're going to ask their opinion and incorporate that into our thought process. So all those groups, it takes some time and energy, and you don't agree, you're not going to agree on everything, but honestly, it's important to get input from all those groups.
Right. And I think you make a very clear distinction there in terms of groups that are still interested in preserving, understanding that protein is a part of our diets, and that to raise it responsibly. And that's, those are the people that I think, yes, be a stakeholder at the table. How do you address, I think, sort of the other umbrella of groups where animal production should not exist? And they seem to point out a lot of things that we may do in what comes to mind is like recent issues, even within our own profession, on depopulation methods. Like, so they may point or go after certain aspects of production where their goal is really just to stop everything. How do you as Purdue Farms engage with those people? Don't engage with those people? How do you deal with those groups?
Well, we listen to the criticism, and honestly, the biggest part of it all is to listen to the criticism, or the thing that you're being criticized for, and figure out if you think you're right, if you have the right position. Because we've been criticized a few times in the past where our answer was, you know what, you're right. That's not that, we're not proud of that. We got to fix that, and here's our plan to fix it. So if there'll be folks critical of a lot of different things, and the important part is for you as a company, for us as a company, and you as a person, to try to decide, first of all, you're not always right. Second of all, perhaps you haven't explained your position very well, and therefore you need to spend more time and energy kind of describing why you got to where you got to. Maybe show people, those that you trust. We do now, we do a tour somewhere in Purdue every other day for the most part. Somebody calls and says, I'd really like to see this. It might be students, it might be government officials, it might be folks that are in the advocacy area, it might be communities of some sort, whatever. And we go, you know what, let's just go to a chicken house and talk about it, and we'll look at it together. And we try to do that. Honestly, we try to have the folks at a very senior level do that, so that they can get the feedback. And generally what we do is write a post-trip report so the rest of the company can see it. Like, this is the biggest thing that concerned these folks before they saw it. Here's what they saw, and do they still feel the same way afterwards? And so spend a lot of time. The transparency word has become a little bit jargonish in a sense, but the truth is, or there is some truth to, if people want to see it, want to know about it, and have the right intention, then spend the energy to do that, because you'll learn something as well.
Absolutely. I think I've heard of several of those types of tours for either press or different advocacy groups, and at least the people that I've talked to that have experienced, like most, and I think kind of what you're saying is the feedback, like most people's perceptions are shifted somewhere. I think most are pleasantly surprised, because I think there's so much misconception of how things are raised, either through labeling or commercials or different things, and people are so removed from agriculture, and these types of things are key to improving the misconceptions. I don't know if we can get rid of them, but
well, on the pre-visit questionnaire, the two things that almost always come up as the biggest concern is I'm really concerned about the smell. This is gonna stink.
it's going to stink.
This is gonna stink. I can guarantee it. And the second thing is, I'm really worried that about the noise. I'm sure that chickens will be agitated, and that the activity, or I don't want to get run. They don't say it. They don't say this, but it's
Right.
in a sense you could interpret it like, I don't want to get run over in there. And those two things are really powerful, because generally they go, wow, that I could stay in. And you often do. We go into the chicken house and you stay for an hour. You would have never guessed. They would have never guessed we were going to spend an hour in this chicken house and be that comfortable and talk about chicken for that long. And so anyhow, it's really helpful for all of us to get the kind of take somebody who's never been in a chicken house and ask them before what they think they're going to see, and see how it went, and listen to the criticism, by the way, because it won't all be positive.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe that would be good for all companies to start doing. In terms of we were talking about the breeds and genetics. Where is Purdue in sort of their movement, or in terms of like slower growing breeds? Do you have a certain percentage now, or where is that innovation headed for you guys?
Well, we're interested to think through let's call them alternative breeds other than the kind of commercial set of genetics that's currently being used. And there's a number of reasons for this. We're growing chickens all the time. Now we have for about 3 years, consistently and persistently looking at breeds outside the normal ones. And there's several reasons for it. One, and I believe in this, one of the things is it makes you more chickeny to see these chickens. It's the behavior is quite different. You often go into those chicken houses or those kinds of breeds and go and see some things that you aren't that you start to wonder. I wonder if I go look for this, is it still occurring in the chickens in the other kind of current standard breed? And it makes you pay attention more to behavior. So that if we didn't do it for any other reason, I believe that's a really good reason to see these birds. The other part is to pay attention to meat quality, to understand that some of these chickens, or to compare and contrast the meat coming from the alternative breeds compared to the kind of standard breeds, understand if there's differences, are they good or bad. The texture on these birds tends to be a little more bitey. Not everybody likes that, but some people really like that. They tend to have less cook loss and higher marinade absorption. So the meat in itself is quite interesting to kind of get some experience with. There tends to be this old chickeny kind of flavor. And that's more, I think, associated with the fact that when you harvest them at 5.5, 6 pounds, they're older. So they've had kind of a longer life, and the meat is more interesting to some, not to all. So, then it's really important for us to understand the economics of those chickens so that we talk from experience. Yes, they have less breast meat. Yes, their conversion's worse. Do we really think they're higher welfare versus our kind of approach to raising the standard breeds? If so, in what areas? And can we fix those areas in the standard breeds by a management adjustment or not? So we can speak with authority about what we think of these chickens, and of course they have some things to work through. Here's what I think, actually, in a nutshell, is I think ducks are interesting. I think turkeys are interesting. Uh, I think pork and beef are interesting. This is another kind of animal. Why wouldn't you be kind of interested in it? As a replacement, that's another subject. But as a distinct kind of animal that deserves or kind of is interesting from a food perspective and just a general husbandry. If you're interested in animals, why wouldn't you be interested in these? Kind of thing. So let's get comfortable with them. Let's understand them. Let's see where, if that's a product that people are interested in, and we can grow them. That'd be good.
Right. What your in terms of your work with them, how many weeks are you seeing with these in terms of getting to like a 5.5, 6 pound bird?
They generally take 2 weeks longer, maybe 3 weeks longer sometimes, and yeah. So there's all kinds of different speeds in these different breeds. The more we look at them, if you did a heritage kind of breed, it might take you, twice as long. But generally, you can get, let's say, 6 for kind of a 6 pound bird, or in that kind of range, or 5.5 pound bird, it's going to take you a couple more weeks.
Okay. And in terms of when we see sometimes in terms of trends and welfare trends, we see Europe being several years ahead of where we are in the United States. Where are things shifting in that realm in terms of either breeds, enrichment, sliding, welfare? Where are things headed there, and sort of what's your crystal ball of what could head this way? I think atmospheric stunning was a great example you gave earlier in terms of going there to see how it works really well and bringing the technology back here. What do you think's the next thing that we could see come over?
I think these breeds will be available, and are kind of currently available to a certain degree. So Gap and Whole Foods has said that they're going to migrate towards the breed at some point here in the next few years. So that's a done, as far as I can tell, that's a done deal. So good. We'll see, but in the United States, the consumer decides how fast a thing will go. If they value it from a meat quality perspective, or from a animal care perspective, they'll buy it. It's going to be more expensive. It is what it is. I'm actually okay with all that kind of thing. And if consumers value it, we can grow more. Having said that, it won't be for everybody, surely, and probably. But the consuming public will decide way faster than any kind of law or component associated with that. And I think that's a really strong part of our 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 opportunity here is to provide consumers with good information and a variation of product, and let them decide.
Let them choose. I think compared to a lot of the rest of the world, the American grocery store does have a lot of choice in terms of types of production and commodities and everything. We definitely are unique in that situation. I think that we have really taken a dive into some of your innovation at Purdue. If you have advice for new professionals in poultry, what would be one piece of advice that you could give them?
Well, the industry, or this industry, needs and values and appreciates, and we need more of enthusiasm and kind of and getting so into the subject beyond what. Yes, do your job, whatever your job is. Do that and do it well. Understand that job, knock it out, and figure out some things in that to take it to another level. Here's your job description, I get it, knock that out. Find some pieces of that you can take to become so kind of crazy passionate about it because you believe it, and because it's valuable to the chicken, and because it's valuable to your company. Get into it beyond just knocking out your job. Hopefully you can find something like that. If it's in a particular area, in the hatchery or in the feed mill or in the processing plant or something, find something to take to a new level. Leave a legacy of sorts about something. And hopefully there's enough things to be enthusiastic about. You can find that. Yes, do your job, and then find something to add to make a mark of some sort. And sometimes you'll think you did, and other people won't think you did, and that's okay too. And sometimes you think I didn't do much here, and people go, wow, that's a big deal. So you don't always get it right, and get feedback from others, about, ask a lot of questions and get enthusiastic about it. That's a big deal. Find something you care about.
That's good advice. I agree. Like you can set yourself apart if you become, a specialist. Like, I always say, people will call, well, do you know somebody good at this? Or do you know somebody, great at that? I need a good hatchery, person. It definitely helps to distinguish yourself for having a skill set that is unique. Well, Bruce, we appreciate your time today. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Poultry Podcast Show. And we will see you the next time.